Good morning, children. Good afternoon, children. It's not morning now. We have a class from 110. So, good afternoon to all of you. Yesterday, we started with the biogeochemical cycles or the nutrient cycles, in which I told you that two types of nutrients which are there are the gaseous and the sedimentary. Gaseous are present in the atmosphere, sedimentary are present in the soil. Example of gaseous, I told you carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, etc. And the examples of sedimentary, I told you sulfur, phosphorus, calcium, and etc. So these two types of nutrients are there. Then I told you that on the basis of the ratio in which the nutrient is blocked, is not used, or or it is used, it is in usable form. That gives you two types of cycles. One is perfect cycle, one is imperfect cycle. In perfect cycle, most of the nutrient is present in usable form. It is not blocked. Most of the gaseous elements are like this. Most of the gaseous nutrients like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, all these are they form perfect cycle because most of them are in use, they are not blocked. Whereas in imperfect cycle, most of the nutrients are blocked and very little is in the usable form. They are blocked in the form of shells. They are, see, the shells have calcium in it, the bones have calcium in it, the rocks have many minerals in it, calcium, phosphorus, many more minerals are present in the rocks. So that means the when the minerals, the nutrients they form rock, that means they are not in cycle, they are present in the form of rock, they are blocked. If the nutrients they form shell, again they are blocked, they are not in the cycle. So mostly the sedimentary nutrients are blocked, and less quantity of it is in the cycle, they are in less quantity of the sedimentary nutrients are in the circulation. So those form imperfect cycle. This is what I told you. Now again today there are the number of students is less. I have 16 students right now, so doesn't matter, but still we can start on. So children, this is about the perfect and imperfect cycle. And after that, I told you that we have to start the cycle. So I start with the first cycle, and that cycle is carbon cycle. Carbon cycle. What is the carbon cycle? This is what I want to tell you. Now, if you see the dry weight, dry weight of carbon in an organism, dry weight of carbon in an organism. Dry weight is when you remove water from it, when you remove water from it, and what is left after dehydrating. Dehydrating means removal of water is the dry weight. In that dry weight, that means if there is an organism and you dehydrate it, dehydrate, that means that you remove the water from it. Remove the water. If you remove water from it or dehydrated, what is left is dry weight. This dry weight of an organism, it contains 49% of carbon. The mineral which is present, the carbon which is present in this dry weight is about 49%. So it is 50% of that dry weight is the carbon. Okay, so this is the amount of dry weight which is present in an organism. Now, if we see, the carbon is present in atmosphere and in oceans. So in atmosphere, there is only 1% of carbon. Only 1% of carbon is present in atmosphere. And in the ocean, in oceans, 71% of carbon is present. In oceans, 71% of carbon is present. That means atmospheric oxygen is just, atmospheric carbon is just 1%, and at oceanic carbon is 71%. So that means most of the carbon is present in the oceans. Now, how this carbon cycle takes place in nature, or the how the carbon circulates in the nature, this is what I'll tell you. The carbon cycle. Okay. So let's start with the carbon cycle. Give me a moment, children. Yes. So let's start with the carbon cycle. In the carbon cycle, suppose this is the water body, this is the water body, and this is the land. This is the land, this is the water body. In the water body, what do we have? In the water body, we have aquatic animals, and we have aquatic organisms, which includes both plants and animals. Along with this, we have phytoplanktons. We have all this. Phytoplanktons is a big population in the oceans. You know, phytoplanktons forms a large population in the ocean. Now, what happens? The aquatic plants and the phytoplanktons. Now, I have written here organism. It includes plants and animals. It includes both. These aquatic plants and these phytoplankton, what do they use? They use the CO2 from the atmosphere. There is CO2 in the atmosphere. Okay. Or they use the carbon which itself is present here for the process of photosynthesis. So what do they do? They perform the process of photosynthesis by the presence of the carbon here and also in the atmosphere. So they perform photosynthesis. By this process of photosynthesis, the carbon is fixed. The carbon is fixed by this process of photosynthesis. Now, besides this, we have the plants on the land. See, the land plant, this is the terrestrial habitat. So the terrestrial habitat has the plants. Okay, these plants also perform the process of photosynthesis. These plants also perform the process of photosynthesis by utilizing the CO2 which is present in the atmosphere. And what do they produce by utilizing? They produce food. That means the carbon now is present in the food. You know, the all the nutrients which makes food, they are carbohydrates, all the biomolecules. That means the carbohydrates, the proteins, the lipids, the fats, everything which is there in the food. The carbon forms a very important component of that. Whether it is protein, it will have CHON. If it is carbohydrate, it will have CHO. If it is lipid, again CH. Okay, so all of them, they have carbon. So whatever the carbon which is taken up by the green plants to perform the process of photosynthesis, they form food, and the biomolecules which form food, they all have carbon in it. This food is then eaten up by the consumers. The consumers eat the food. It is better if I write this way. It will be, doesn't matter. The consumers eat the food. Now what happens? After the consumers eat the food, what is the next step? Next step is death. Okay, so they die. Their death, they also die. Okay, and after they die, their death and decomposition. When they die, what it helps, that it brings the carbon back into the soil, death and decomposition. Okay, at the same time, what happens that these these plants, of course, because both are living organisms, the plants and the consumers both, these plants and the consumers both, when they respire, they undergo, I'll write it here, I think that will make it better. Just a minute, beta, you will understand it better that way. If I write here plants, they utilize this for the process of photosynthesis. They form food, and this food, which has all the biomolecules containing carbon, is eaten up by consumers. Their death and decay again brings some carbon into the atmosphere. At the same time, because both the plants and the animals, both the plants and the consumers, both are living organisms, so they respire. And because their process of respiration, when they respire, the CO2 is again added into the atmosphere. CO2 in atmosphere is added as a result of their uh, respiration. See, at the same time, the CO2 which is already there is used up by the plant for the process of photosynthesis. And when they respire, it is again given back. This is one of the phase of the cycle. And when these plants and the animals, when they die, okay, so after their death and decomposition, their body decomposes. So what happens? Some fossil fuel is formed. Fossil fuel, inside the fossil fuel. When this fossil fuel burns, burning of this fossil fuel, burning of this fossil fuel, when it burns again, CO2, it's burning against releases CO2 in the atmosphere. So this way also CO2 is released in the atmosphere, and the amount of CO2 which is released, some of it is not some, a lot of it is used by the plants for photosynthesis, also by the phytoplanktons and some aquatic plants also. Now these aquatic organisms and phytoplanktons, they also respire, and because of their respiration, again the CO2 is released in the atmosphere. CO2 is released in the atmosphere. Now, one more source of carbon is limestone. Limestone can be present in water, or it can be present inside the soil. Limestone. Okay. In the soil also, the underground water, the carbon from this limestone, the carbon dissolves with water, and this carbon comes in solution form and then is used up by the plants during the process of their growth. Okay, so this can be used up by the land plants. At the same time, the limestone which is present inside the oceans, this also dissolves. Because of the presence of this limestone in the ocean, the carbon dissolves in oceanic water, okay, in oceans. And this water then is utilized by the plants and animals. And see the amount of carbon, first it increases in the water, and then from there it is taken up by the aquatic organisms. When they respire, the CO2 is released in the atmosphere. This is how the carbon cycle goes on in the environment. Is it clear, beta? Anything you want to ask in this carbon cycle? Yes, bache? Anything you want to ask in the carbon cycle? Yes, beta? Yes, bache? Okay, fine. So next cycle which is there in your syllabus is phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus cycle. Now let's start with the phosphorus cycle. The phosphorus is present in nature. And what is the usable form of phosphorus? Means the form of phosphorus which can be used by the organism, that is the usable form. The usable form of phosphorus is phosphate. Usable form is phosphate. Phosphate is the usable form of phosphorus. Now, where is it present? The source of phosphorus. Where is it present? Where is it present, or from where we can obtain? The phosphorus is present in rocks. Okay, of course, soil forms a very important deposit of phosphorus. Besides this, if we stay inside the cell, the nucleic acid, nucleic acid, that means the DNA and RNA, it has this. DNA, RNA both has phosphorus, if you remember. Do they have phosphorus? The central part is formed by the nitrogenous bases, and the sides of the DNA coil, it is formed by sugar and phosphate. So phosphorus is present in DNA as well as in RNA. Then besides this, the high energy compounds, also have phosphorus in it, like ATP, NADP, FADH. They all have phosphorus in it. Besides this, the phosphorus also forms an important component of plasma membrane. The lipid part of phosphorus. See, the plasma membrane consists of proteins and lipids, but which lipids? It is phospholipids. Phospholipids are present in the plasma membrane. So it is an important part of plasma membrane also. Besides this, phosphorus is present in teeth. It is present in bones. It is present in shells, etc. So these are present. This is the site where we can find phosphorus, or where the phosphorus remains blocked or is present. So now we come to the phosphorus cycle. So phosphorus cycle, phosphorus cycle. The phosphorus is present in rocks under the soil. From the rocks, it gets dissolved in H2O. Dissolves in water. Now, when it dissolves in water, who will take this dissolved? This dissolved material will be taken up by the plants. So we can write down, after it dissolves, the phosphates are released in soil. Phosphates released in soil, and these phosphates which are released in the soil, they are taken up by the plants or producers. So this is the soil. Land now means the top part of the soil. So the producers, they use it for their growth. The producers use it for their growth. After their growth, what happens? These producers, these are consumed, used up by consumers. Consumers use it to obtain their food. Now, the producers, that means plants. Producers are plants. Now, what happens? You know, the plants have the litter fall also. Litter fall. Litter, litter fall. That means the falling of the leaves and other twigs and all. So this litter fall, this is acted upon by detritivores. Detritivores. Detritivores act on it, and when the detritivores act on it, the phosphorus is released. Phosphorus is released in the soil. At the same time, when the consumers and the producers, they die, their death, after their death, what is their decomposition of their body? Decomposition. This also releases phosphorus into the soil. So the phosphorus is released back into the soil, phosphorus in soil. So this is how it goes, the phosphorus cycle. The phosphorus which is there in the rocks first is dissolves in water. The phosphates are released in the soil, then it is used up by producers or the plants. Then they are eaten up by the consumers. When the consumers eat it, they die. The producers also die. So when they die, their body gets decomposed, and the phosphorus is released in the soil. They may form rock or they remain in the soil. At the same time, the producers, which are plants, they go through this litter fall, the falling of their twigs, the delicate parts, the twigs, the leaves, etc. When they fall, they are acted upon by detritivores like earthworms, which break them into detritus, into small fragments. So that the detritivores, when they break them into small fragments or fragmentation takes place, that also releases phosphorus in the soil. So this is how the phosphorus cycle goes on. Is it clear, this phosphorus cycle, beta? Any problem in this phosphorus cycle, bache? Or is it clear? Yes, beta? Okay, now we come to the next cycle, and that is sulfur cycle. After phosphorus cycle, we have this sulfur cycle. The sulfur cycle. Now, what is the sulfur cycle? The usable form of sulfur is sulfates. It is used in the form of sulfates. This sulfur, it forms some amino acids in the body. So it is present in the form of amino acids in living organisms, and of course in plants and animals both. This is present in the form of amino acid. Now what happens? The sulfur is there in the soil also. So this is sulfur. This sulfur dissolves, again dissolution, dissolves in water, changes into sulfates, and these sulfates are then absorbed by the plants, by the producers. So the producers take it. These producers, when they take it, they use this to synthesize sulfur containing amino acids. They use it to synthesize sulfur containing amino acids. When they synthesize this sulfur containing amino acids, these are then, these producers, when they synthesize these amino acids from them, these are taken up by the consumers. So the consumers obtain these amino acids, they build up their body because these amino acids finally form the protein. They built up their body, and after that, of course, they will die. Their death of producers also, they're also death. And after death, their body decomposes. Decomposition. So when their body decomposes after death, again the sulfur is released in the atmosphere. So the sulfur is released in the atmosphere. This is how the sulfur cycle goes on. So this is the sulfur cycle. Any doubt, any query in these three cycles? Yes, beta? Yes, bache. Any doubt, any query in these 3 cycles? Clear. Fine. It's clear. Now, what I want to tell you is